All right, with Election Day looming, my colleague James tells you, the more liberal of the two of us, tells you why he hates Trump so much. Enjoy. Watch and or listen while we tackle tough and sometimes taboo topics filmed live over drinks. This platform allows us to articulate our thoughts and challenge our beliefs. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy. All right, we are live. This is SipTalk, episode 259. Today, we are listening to a liberal tell you why he hates Trump. My name is Justin DiGiulio, out of my office, DiGiulio Real Estate Group, joined by James, the Bartender, Boswell, philosopher, philanthropist, philatelist, phlebotomist, a man of very high pH. James, how's it going?
I'm here to tell you why I think Trump would be a terrible pick for president and why you should too.
So not only are you telling us your opinion, you're also trying to sway the voter's mind in a last-ditch Hail Mary to save the presidency.
Yeah, the tentative title that I had for this podcast was, "Don't do this, America."
I've changed the title to "A Liberal Tells You Why You Should Not Vote for Trump," or why he hates Trump.
But that's my core message: is guys, just don't do this.
So I will do my best to play devil's advocate, but it is the Friday night before election night. So James is going to give this his hardest push. He has a very long list. I think there's a good chance we may not actually get to the bottom of the list. There's so much. And I want you to remind me what you're telling me about the list and it being so long, almost working against itself. But before I do that, I want to invite anybody who's watching to watch us live on YouTube or my Facebook page so we can see your comments, because we can't actually see your comments on Instagram or TikTok. If you are watching us live, and check out SipTalkPodcast.com. You can buy us a drink, but you can also go there and answer each week's bar trivia question, which about halfway through this episode, we will cover the answer to last week's bar trivia question. I thought it was a pretty cool one. And we got a new one coming up as well. So we have this long list of reasons why you don't like Trump and why you think no one else should like Trump and why he's not fit to be president. So what were you telling me about this long list almost working against itself?
Yeah, so I was thinking back to, for those of you who are old enough to remember, in 2004, Howard Dean was running for the Democratic nomination for president. And there was a moment during a campaign rally of his where he made like an awkward sounding yell. He was pumped up and trying to get the crowd pumped up, and the way he sounded just was like a little bit weird, right? And then like 2 days later, his campaign was over. There was nothing wrong with his policies. There was nothing in his like personal history that people found like, oh no, we can't keep this guy anymore. It was just one awkward sounding yell, and everyone's like, no, we can't do this anymore. And yeah, his campaign was over in like literally less than a week.
I have the screen. I have the screen. 1 second. Here it comes. Maybe not. All right, we'll go back. All right. So I thought I was going to pull it up on YouTube, but.
So I put together an outline for tonight's cast that clocks in at like 1,500 words, and that's an outline. And I was thinking, like a lot of these on their own, like. We can skip it. Come on. Just a lot of dead air, and.
All right. Well, it was a silly series.
I was looking at this long list that I created, and I was thinking probably 80 to 90% of the reasons that I have listed on their own should be enough to say this guy shouldn't be president. But the fact that there is such a huge volume of problems with him makes each individual problem seem smaller than it is. But
there's got to be a term for that paradox. Kind of the more there is, the kind of decreasing, utility.
I mean, it's related to the paradox of choice, but I don't feel like it's exactly the same.
Well, we'll call
But
it.
anyways, look, we got a lot to go through, so let's just get into it.
All right. So this is your list.
Yeah.
I
All
will
right.
do my best to play
This
devil's
is
advocate.
in no particular order. Like I threw a whole bunch of stuff in there. I've got it somewhat grouped, but in terms of like I'm not doing in terms of like least bad to most bad or anything like that. It's just kind of grouped by category of problems. So, number 1,
Keep in mind.
Trump has a long history of fraud. Both
Yeah.
like you can look
Which
at Trump University.
so
Found criminally liable for fraud, had to pay $25 million settlement to misleading and bilking its former students with such great advice as max out your credit card.
well, that was. I think they were telling people probably to do that to buy the program, right? To join.
I think it was also part of like their financial advising classes is like, yeah, max out your credit card to like fund your business or something.
Interesting. Yeah.
But yeah, so his university had to pay out a $25 million settlement. He had a charitable foundation that was found criminally and civilly liable for misusing charitable donations, and that organization had to pay a $2 million fine. Just this year, his business, the Trump Organization, was found guilty of fraud in New York and has to pay a $355 million settlement for fraudulently misvaluing assets for favorable loan terms with banks and insurance companies. So, like, when you look at this man's business experience and business acumen, basically every single thing he touches is fraudulent. And if it's
So,
not fraudulent, it probably failed. This man bankrupted a casino, which is amazing to do. Like, I don't know how you do that.
but the thing is, this is not new. It's not new news. Trump has kind of always been known for kind of like being a sham of a wealthy businessman. So, and even like misvaluing his assets, like that was something I didn't need to learn from the court settlement that was true. And there's an argument that his bid for presidency is an attempt for him to collect donations and collect funds to kind of sustain his life and clean up the messes that he kind of has in his wake.
Well, I think you could make that argument more strongly for his 2016 campaign, where it was more for him to just use as a large self-promotion tour and to get some donations from what he deemed to be like easily bilkable groups and just get political donations and use them for his own personal things, which he tried to do a number of times in his campaign.
But here's
And
the thing.
and when he was president, like he made the Secret Service stay at his properties and pay like inflated rates at his hotels. So like the government paid Trump Organization directly for Secret Service agents having to stay at his properties, and he inflated the rates on those places. So that's not necessarily fraud.
That doesn't. Yeah, no, but it's just kind of a lousy. He's like, well, the government's paid for it. We're going to charge more.
Right.
But no, I think what happened though, actually, and this is interesting, is that after he became president, after he was out of office and he pushed so hard to try to remain in office, the last 4 years for him have been very, very bad financially and legally. He's had just a lot of chaos kind of going on with different lawsuits and things like that. And I think a lot of them are kind of very liberal driven. I think he just keeps pushing forward, and the more he pushes forward, the more the liberals just attack him over literally everything.
Well, we're gonna come back to some of his court cases, and I'm gonna make the argument as to why they're not liberal plots.
Well, let's just finish out this category where you have this.
So when he's not a fraud, he's just like a cheap huckster. So you've got like the Trump NFTs, the Trump Bibles, the Trump steaks, the Trump trading cards, the Trump sneakers. He has no shame in what he's going to sell as long as he can make a buck off of it. And I'm not well versed in the Bible, but I'm pretty sure that like in the Bible it says that you should not profit from the religion.
Yeah, I mean the branding shouldn't be a large part of the Bible. Right, like I know you have the Gideon's Bible that's usually in the hotels, but Gideon is not like in gold foil across the face of the Bible.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between like if you put together a Bible that has artistry to it and you sell it for more because it's also a piece of art, that's different. This is like a faux leather bound made in China Bible. And so it's just like
Have you seen the shoes? Have you seen the shoes?
yeah, they're cheap like gold pleather sneakers.
Yeah.
That probably cost anywhere between like $18 and $36 to manufacture.
All right. So hit the next one.
But I'm just going to finish up with the fraud and the cheap huckster thing. Is just it lowers the station of the office when you have somebody with those kind of qualities as president.
So I am not as against Trump as you are, but I will say that you take someone of his reputation over the last several decades, which is kind of like this shiesty businessman, not very presidential.
No, and he wasn't very presidential when he was president.
I just, we opened this office a couple of weeks ago, and I was just having a conversation. We were talking lightly about politics, and I said, if I was a clown, speaking with one of the agents here, said if I was a clown, you probably wouldn't want to work here. You wouldn't want to be part of this organization if I was a goofball. And Trump is very much kind of a goofball. He's not very presidential whatsoever. He's not very well spoken. And I mean, maybe you believe in his policies, but I also think
we're going to get to that.
Okay. Well, we'll
all right. Next up.
This is your list.
Next up, Trump is a rapist and a sexual abuser of women.
So these are some. Hit the list.
So just this year, he was found liable for defaming E. Jean Carroll, and the judge stated that the allegations that were made against him, that a jury of his peers found him liable for committing, meets the criminal, like the legal definition of rape. So because it wasn't a criminal trial, because the statute of limitations had expired, like it could only be pursued civilly. But the judge says this meets the definition of rape. It's well documented his friendship and affiliation with Jeffrey Epstein, who trafficked underage girls for years. He's been credibly accused by at least 28 women of various sexual assaults. If you remember the Access Hollywood tape back in 2016 of Grab 'em by the Pussy, like he's describing things he has done to women. Like,
sure, but I think that the interpretation of that tape, he didn't say I walk around and grab women by the pussy.
He says when you're famous, they let you do it.
Yeah,
he's describing what he has done. He knows that they will let you do it because he has done it.
There might be some exaggeration there, but literally, here's the thing. Again, the biggest issue I had with that was it just wasn't very presidential. Somebody who's running for president shouldn't say that shit. Whether it was implying that he does it all the time or had done it all the time, I don't think that matters. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I don't think it's him admitting, yes, this is what I do, is just walk around and grab women by the pussy because I can. I don't think he was saying that. You do.
I do, but you know what? I'll even just go with even if we go with your interpretation, is that how you want a president of your country to be talking?
All right.
Next. He would enter the changing rooms of Miss USA contestants under the guise of giving an inspection so he could look at like the models changing. Like, this is on tape, him talking about it. I'm not saying this. I'm not saying that he's accused of it. I'm saying he has talked about it himself. He's admitted to doing this.
Yeah.
And this is an account from his former wife, Ivana Trump, that he pulled her hair out from her scalp because she had recommended a doctor that he didn't like for hair plugs. So not only is he a sexual abuser of women, he's also a physical abuser of women.
Yeah, that sounds pretty bad, and does not surprise me. I can imagine if you were somebody who was a physical abuser, how mad you would be about getting the wrong hair plugs. Obviously, I've not opted towards hair plugs. But I can imagine having bad hair plugs being very mad about it.
All right, next. Trump has a long history with racism. And I think this quote
Go
sums
ahead.
it up.
Yeah, read the quote. It's
All right.
but like this is a quote from
This,
like the 70s or 80s.
yeah. I think this is a quote from a book where a guy was writing like kind of a bio on Trump. And he says that Trump said, and I quote, "I've got black accountants at Trump Castle and at Trump Plaza. Black guys counting my money. I hate it. The only kind of people I want counting my money are short guys wearing yarmulkes. Those are the only kinds of people I want counting my money. Nobody else. Besides that, I've got to tell you something. I think that the guy's lazy, and it's not his fault because laziness is a trait in blacks."
That's pretty bad. And so here's the thing: a statement like that, if the scream of Howard Dean going "yeah" is enough to because he was a decent candidate actually. Uh, if that scream could bring him down, a quote like this is pretty bad. It's
Yeah.
pretty bad. I mean, I understand he's kind of like implying stereotypes here. Not that that's a good thing or deserves a pass, but it's it's just not something you say.
I mean, I think saying laziness is a trait in blacks is pretty awful.
Yeah, I agree. That's a blatantly racist statement.
Yeah. In the 1970s, he instructed the superintendents of his buildings to label lease applications with C for colored, presumably so he could deny them. He had policies in place at his casinos to keep women and black people away from the craps tables.
So some of these I did look up, when I was reading through your notes here, and this was a policy within his casino. It doesn't necessarily mean that he set the policy, but back in the 70s, there was a lot. Racism was a lot different than it is today. So I imagine that there were other casinos maybe that were doing the same exact thing.
All right, well, let's talk about this one then. After a Mexican-American, like a soldier that was an American citizen with Mexican heritage, was murdered on a U.S. Army base. Trump initially told the family of the dead soldier that he would pay for the funeral, and then when his aides told him like the bill for the funeral was going to be $60,000, he says, "Doesn't cost $60,000 to bury a fucking Mexican. I'm not paying it."
So listen, I looked this one up as well, and I vaguely remember this. A U.S. soldier died. He promised to pay for it, and then when he was presented with the bill, he basically said it cost too much. Now, I will say though, $60,000 is a lot of money for a funeral. I looked up the average funeral cost is like $5,000 to $7,000. Luxury funerals, could be north of $20,000. I don't know what they were doing for this funeral.
It was probably like a whole bunch of military honors where you'd have to pay service members to do like a 21 gun salute and stuff like that. And so if you're paying a whole bunch of military people like salary time for the cost of the attendance of the funeral, I don't know, but I care less about the fact that he didn't pay for it and more about the fact that one, he promised he would to make himself look good, and two,
and then
him saying it doesn't cost $60,000 to bury a fucking Mexican. So he's implying that Mexicans are worth less than Americans.
Well, first off, he was a U.S. soldier, so
yeah,
he was
right. American. So even though they were a U.S. citizen and a U.S. soldier, because they had Mexican heritage, they're not American in the eyes of Trump. That's the implication from that sentence.
Well, and here's where I think that Trump derangement comes into play. Is like you're reading into a little too much. It's a really bad thing to say. Somebody who's president should not say it. And $60,000 really is not that much money when you're bragging about having billions of dollars.
Okay.
So
next, calling various countries that just so happen to be majority black shithole countries. And why can't we have more people from Norway come here, which is almost entirely a white country?
So I think he's called most like third world countries shitholes. I understand that perspective, and you can believe it or not believe it, but I think there's a lot of one. I do think there's a lot of third world countries. They don't call them third world countries anymore. They call them developing nations. But I think some of those are really nice. However, the president of the United States should not be referring to any other country as a shithole. That's not what the. So I mean, I'm in agreement with you on a lot of these things. I'm not endorsing the candidate. Make it very clear. I'm not endorsing either.
The last one on the racism topic. I could go on probably for an hour just on this one, but I'm trying to cast a broad net here. Is when he was condemning the Black Lives Matter protesters as thugs and criminals, and the Black Lives Matter protesters were probably much more black than the protesters for January 6th, who he happened to praise and call them political hostages. So, like,
yeah,
there's some implied racism there. It's not as strong a case as the first quote that I said, where he says laziness is a trait in blacks.
No, but the his handling of Black Lives Matter. Although a lot of the there's a lot of issues with the Black Lives Matter campaign. It is what it is. But January 6th was a total disaster.
We're gonna get back to that. I've got a different section on January 6th.
All right. And we got somebody.
This one's going to be quick because, again, I can let this topic suck all the air out of the conversation if I let it, which is Trump lies knowingly and repeatedly about things big and small.
So there's a very, politicians lie. It's kind of what people have come to expect, which is a sad state of things. But the lies that Trump says are somehow different.
They're different because, one, many times they're readily and easily disprovable. And even when he is proven wrong, he refuses to acknowledge that. And I'm going to go with, during his debate with Harris, let me finish this thought out. Like when he talks about how in Springfield they're eating the dogs, and then immediately afterwards, when the anchors say, "We researched this and that's not true," and he refuses to believe and says, "But the people on TV say it." And in subsequent interviews that he had over the following weeks, where he was challenged on that claim, and even more evidence was put forward to him to explain that the origin of these stories were either misunderstandings or deliberate misrepresentations, and that it wasn't true, he still refused to back down and retract the claim.
So, but here's what I was going to say. Is that his lies actually don't gain standing for him. They don't help him. His lies most of the time, I think, actually set him back because they kind of are so blatant. Now, I'm sure some people believe that dogs are being eaten. And when I heard that before the debate, actually, I heard it before the debate. I looked into it and I was like, "Is this weird?" I couldn't find. There had to have been like some base of it, and the base must have been wrong because I couldn't find it, and I really couldn't find anything. And then we did see the news story about the woman who had eaten a cat. Apparently, she was high or something.
No, there was a news story where a woman reported her cat was missing to the police and told the police she thought her Haitian neighbors had taken it, and then 2 days later she found her cat in the basement, and she retracted.
You didn't see the video of the woman who was all messed up, and they're like, "Are you eating that cat?" She was, "No, I wasn't eating the cat."
No, but I also think about the one where they talk about the people killing the geese, and you've got a picture of a black guy holding a geese by the neck, and it turns out that he was an employee of Ohio Transportation Department cleaning up roadkill. So they take a picture of a black guy who happens to just be doing his job, and then make it seem like he's an immigrant that's killing geese at a park.
Yeah.
And so there's misunderstandings lead to misrepresentations, and anybody can get the facts wrong on a case, but when you have the facts corrected and presented to you, that's when you say, "Oh, I had the wrong idea. Thank you for helping me understand this better." But Trump doesn't have the ability to do that. And you talk about him lying in ways that don't really help him. So if you think back, I don't remember which hurricane it was, but there was a hurricane that 8 days out, like could have possibly hit Alabama, but like as they refined the forecast, Alabama was no longer in the forecast cone, right? But Trump talked about in one of his press conferences, like, yeah, the people of Alabama need to get ready for this one. And then like people are like, no, Alabama is no longer in the threat cone. And then Trump shows up to a press conference with the forecast cone in the background on a poster, and you can see he sharpied in an extra like cone to show Alabama being in it. It's like he's that small that like
Well,
he couldn't stand to have like been wrong about like a forecast of our hurricane and have misspoken about it. And so instead of just saying, "Oh, well, I mean, maybe an older forecast said Alabama, I guess not." He had to take a Sharpie and draw on the poster to make him right.
okay. Well, listen, I looked this up real quick. So there's police body camera showing what they're saying is a Haitian woman eating a cat in Ohio. And the correction is she was born in the U.S. It wasn't Ohio, and she pleaded not guilty. Not that, but not that she didn't not eat the cat. She pleaded not guilty, saying she did eat the cat, but it was temporary insanity.
Okay, so like
There's still a video of a woman eating a cat,
all
and
right,
that
well,
seems to be the base
yeah,
for
but
the Haitian
okay.
people eating dogs. So,
Right. So again,
there's
that's a misunderstanding because it's probably someone who is just weaked out on some crazy drugs doing something insane, which you can
and I
find
believe she
videos of white
was.
people doing that shit too.
I believe she was Haitian, but not like born in Haiti, grew up in Haiti. She was born in the U.S. So, but just how things get twisted so
It's
much.
like the thing about his lies, like, is that they're harmful. Like the lie about Haitian immigrants eating pets in Springfield led to like white supremacists going to Springfield and causing all sorts of problems there. He talks about like with abortion that like you can have a baby born and then still kill it after it's born.
That was he said that like twice during the
He said
debate.
that more than twice. Where
Yeah,
like even after the baby's born, the doctor will pull you aside and ask you, "What do you want to do about that?" And that's illegal in every single state. No doctor will ever do that, ever.
uh,
But he
yeah,
lies about that to try and gin up support for his policies. And the thing about the amount that he lies is that what takes him 5 or 10 seconds to lie about will take you 2 or 3 minutes at least to disprove. And so again, it sucks all the air out of the conversation because you have to spend all your energy disproving their lies instead of positing your policy position.
all right. Let's move forward.
Last thing on the lying, like as I just said, there's too many examples for me to list. One estimate put his lies at over 30,000 over the 4 years as he was a president. So
Yeah,
we're just going to leave it at that. It's like even if you say that number is off by a factor of 5, that's still 6,000 lies in 4 years.
yeah. I get it. I get it.
All right, next one, and this is getting into why he would be a bad president. Like most of what we've talked about so far has been why his character is unfit for office. Here is why his character makes him a bad president in terms of the effect he has on people in this country. And that is Trump is not interested in helping anybody who is not going to do a favor back for him.
Yeah, it's a really shitty way to set policy. Is that I don't know. It's like it's a way to grow up and not have a lot of friends. Like,
But when you're, it's even worse when a large part of your job is helping people. Because if you think about it, as a president, you're directing the government to help people. Because ultimately, the government is to help people.
well, I think
That's why government exists, right?
listen. I think Kamala Harris believes she's the president for everybody, but is going to pass a lot of very liberal policies. On the other hand, Trump doesn't believe he's the president for everybody. He believes he's just the president for his base and is only going to support his base. So I think Kamala is not going to be, she's not going to look at Republican policies and consider them at all. But I think she believes in her mind that she's doing the best thing for the country. I think Trump believes in his mind he's only doing the best things for the people that support him.
Well, you know what I'll say? Like, let's not even talk about Harris. Let's talk about Biden real quick. If there was a video, Biden was at a 9/11 memorial service. I believe it was in Pennsylvania. And you can see him interacting with the Trump supporter and like exchanging hats with him and taking a photo with him and joking around and being friendly with him. Like, Biden knows that guy never would vote for him and is not going to vote for Harris or anything else, but Biden is still cordial and friendly with him and joking with him. So, like, you can just look at that. Like, can you imagine Trump being friendly with somebody that he knows won't vote for him? Can you imagine him doing that?
No, that's my point. Is he wouldn't even try.
Right.
Even try. So we're about the halfway.
All right, here's some quick examples. Right. So when there were some wildfires in California, he initially didn't want to give any federal aid to California because California didn't vote for him. It was only after his aides explained to him that there were a ton of Republican voters in certain areas in California and it would matter for like Senate and congressional races that he actually agreed to send the aid. He refused to give military aid to Ukraine unless they were willing to announce a sham investigation into one of his political rivals. He encouraged GOP members to vote against the 2023/2024 bipartisan immigration bill, not because the bill was bad, but because he didn't want the Democrats to claim they were taking action on immigration in an election year. Even though the bill would have helped improve the situation at the border, it didn't help Trump and therefore was bad. Last one. During the 2016 transition between the Obama administration and the incoming Trump administration, Chris Christie was one of the people in charge of his transition team. And he yells at Chris Christie, don't use, and Chris Christie was spending his campaign money on transition activities, which is absolutely normal to do. And Trump yelled at him, don't use that money on the transition. That's my money.
Yeah. Him and Chris Christie have a very interesting relationship. I think Christie tried to embrace him at one point, but it's tough because you are kind of doomed if you don't have Trump's back publicly.
Yeah, and I'm not a fan of Chris Christie, but I think at some point, like, what little integrity Chris Christie had left was enough for him to realize that he could not be associated with Trump anymore.
Yeah. So we're halfway through this episode.
Yep. Next one. Trump's rhetoric.
We're not going to the next one yet. We're going to discuss is the answer to last week's bar trivia question, which I believe that you actually got it on the spot. So my question for you now is, do you remember last week's bar trivia question?
I do.
Okay. What was it?
What is something that is so fragile that you can break it just by saying its name?
Good, very good memory. Very good memory. For those of you guys who can't remember, you got to visit SipTalkPodcast.com to check out the bar trivia question. And the answer is
silence.
Silence. What is so fragile? Saying its name will break it. Silence. Hang tight. That's a good one. I like that. I've got another one that is a very similar style trivia question, and we will get there shortly in about another 20 minutes. Hang tight.
All right. Next one. And I'm going to go through this one quick, but Trump's rhetoric, especially recently, is a very close echo of Nazism and fascism. So things like...
I just on this note, a lot of what I hear about Trump, I classify as Trump derangement syndrome. You know, people hearing things that he says that seem like perfectly normal things. I watch them, a lot of them live, and then the next day I hear reporting on them just taking them so far out of context. You know, like Trump has told people they should drink bleach. He didn't say you should drink bleach. He said, so they say bleach will kill the virus. I wonder if there might be some way of, you know, sort of like getting it in the body or something. Maybe we could look into that. He didn't say you should drink bleach. But point is, it was just completely
Your representation of what he said is much closer to the truth than saying he told people to drink bleach. But what he said was still profoundly stupid, just for a slightly different reason.
Hear me out. Yes, he said something dumb. But what I see happening a lot is this derangement. People taking things so far out of context, and it was clear that that's not like you don't need. There's enough shit on him that everything he says doesn't need to be taken out of context.
So let's hit these.
However, on this list that you have, what you're saying right now, some of these things I question myself. So I knew in the 2016 election that he was setting, if he lost, he would have fought very hard, and it was basically he said something along the lines of, there could be voter fraud, or there could be,
it's only rigged if I lose, something like that.
That's what he said, but he was setting it up so that there would be some doubt if he had lost.
Yeah,
he has continued to play this game, and if he does lose this year, there's going to be a lot of anarchy caused because of it. But go ahead.
Let's talk about some of these things that he's said, because, you want to talk about the whole Trump derangement syndrome and whatnot. I think that these fall so far out of bounds for what is reasonable political speech in this country that they need to be addressed. And I'm just going to hit them one at a time. One, referring to immigrants as vermin, which is straight out of Mein Kampf in terms of talking about Jews as vermin. He's talked about immigrants are poisoning the blood of this country. Again, that's Hitler shit. That's straight out of the Nazi rhetoric of outsiders are poisoning the blood of this country. They are impure. We are pure. They're poisoning our blood. On immigrants, he says, no, they're not humans. They're animals. Referring to anyone who doesn't agree with him as the enemy within. He's promised on multiple occasions to be dictator for a day. He proposed a police holiday where the police can act without legal restrictions for an hour or a day. He's like, yeah, just have one really rough hour, one really rough day, and let the police do whatever they need to do to clean up crime.
What's that movie they have?
The Purge.
The Purge, yeah.
Yeah, so this would be the Purge, but just for police officers.
Only for police officers.
Yeah. Asking why he can't have the kind of generals that Hitler had. And you can find a number of clips of this, of him encouraging violence against those who disagree with him at his rallies, saying, yeah, go ahead and lay him out. I'll pay the legal bills for you. And calling the press the enemy of the people. These are all Nazi and fascist things, and he's just gotten more brazen in the way that he says them in the last couple months. But he's been saying this stuff for years.
Well, listen, a lot of the stuff we've talked about, I have heard because I listen to a lot of news. But in the last 6 months to year, I've pretty much just been in the dark with all news. I have not actually heard any of these. So I can't argue with you on these. I can't say they're true or false.
I can tell you they're true, and if you want, I will send you links to an article covering every single one of those.
Well, the one that I did look up was, let's see, dictator for day. Something about Hitler. Oh, why can't his generals be like
the ones that Hitler had?
Well, and I think he didn't say that per se.
No, he did, because he said, why can't I have the kind of generals that Germany had? And his chief of staff said, oh, you mean the ones Otto von Bismarck had? No, not that guy. John Kelly tried to go through all the other German regimes that had generals, and because he was trying to be you
and he was also, I don't know if he said the generals like Hitler had, but he said the generals like the Germans do, and then that went back and forth, and then he reminded that some of Hitler's generals tried to kill him.
Yeah,
he denied that having been attempted. So that was one that I did research, but I hadn't heard it before.
Okay, well
I think his point there was he wanted generals that are going to do what he told them to do.
Yeah, but the thing is, if I were president, sure, I would want generals that do what I want them to do. But I'm not going to make that case by saying I want generals like the way Hitler had. It's an odd comparison to make if those ideas aren't already in the back of your head.
It's just
You can think about it like a Freudian slip, so to speak.
yeah, it's just bad.
All right.
All right. So now,
Next up, we're more on policy now. So Trump's plans would crash our economy. So first one, and I can send the link to this if you want, but like interest rates right now for mortgages and a whole bunch of other things are really high. They're actually predicted to go up if Trump is president. This is an article from Yahoo Finance.
they are
Next one.
hold on, but just to clarify, the president does not really have any influence over interest rates. So it's not that he would
Not
raise,
directly.
but but they might have something to do with real estate. I don't know.
No, the reason why interest rates would go up under Trump is basically a result of a bunch of his other policies, and because his other policies would be inflationary. And I'm getting to that to a second. Like if his economic policies are going to increase inflation, then the Fed's going to have to react by raising rates to combat that inflation. So he wouldn't directly raise rates himself because no president has control over that. But
No,
presidents have a lot of control over directions of policies that can affect economic conditions that the Fed then has to react to.
I think you're going to get into tariffs in a minute, and I imagine that that's going to be the cause of the inflation, which would be the cause of the interest rates going up because the last several years they raised interest rates to combat inflation.
All right, so I'll skip ahead to tariffs, and the estimate is that Trump's tariffs would cost the average American about $4,000 a year more due to increasing the cost of imports.
So, what a lot of people don't understand, and it's kind of funny, is that Trump says, almost bragging, that the way that he would have the U.S., I guess, consume fewer foreign goods would be to charge them tariffs. But the companies that sell us iPhones,
Foxconn, let's say Foxconn.
They don't pay the tariff. They just make the product, and the tariffs is a tax. So,
it's a tax paid by the importing company when the goods arrive on our shores.
So what it does, it decreases the cost to buy the product in the U.S.
Yes.
So the person so if I want to sell shoes, and the shoes used to cost $10 a shoe, let's say the shoes cost $60 a shoe, okay, and I would sell them for $80. Now there's a 40% tax. Okay.
So now the shoes are costing you $84.
They cost me $84. I can't sell them for $80 anymore, right? So now I have to sell them for $100. So the $80 pair of shoes went to $100 because my cost went up. But
right, and the thing is, he's talking about putting tariffs on countries like China, and he's representing it like China, either Chinese companies or the Chinese government would be paying these tariffs, and that's not the case.
Well,
the people that would be paying these tariffs
is that I'm no longer going to buy the shoes from China at $60 a shoe. I'm going to buy them from Joe in Indiana.
Sure,
but
and
he's not going to make $60.
Okay.
He's going to make $60.
Well, here the thing about it is, the only time that tariffs would work to help like American businesses sell their goods as compared to foreign goods is basically if 100% of the material sourcing and labor and everything else is done within our borders. So if you think about something like a car, right? Let's imagine you got a car plant in Detroit. If you have, let's say, 100% tariffs from China, well, that car might be assembled in Detroit, but I bet a good portion of the parts that are going into that car are manufactured in China. So they build the parts in China, they ship them over here, and then somebody in Detroit puts them all together on the factory floor. So now all the parts that are going into your car cost twice as much. Your car is going to cost close to twice as much because the materials cost went up. Unless you have an American company that is able to do all the machining, all the fabrication, all the manufacturing of 100% of the parts that go into this car, then tariffs are going to make that thing more expensive for you. And that's true of any good. As long as there's anything imported that goes into that product will cost more for you.
Is that it's literally every product. There are very few products that are manufactured and sourced only in the U.S. Even something that's manufactured in the U.S. is often most often sourced from outside of the U.S.
Yeah, even if the raw materials are coming from somewhere else, yeah. So, like, the tariffs would be heavily inflationary, and we're just starting to get a handle on inflation now. The next one, so this whole call for mass deportations, I'm not even going to address the humanitarian aspects of it yet. I'm just going to say that numerous economic studies have said that if he were to deport the number of people he's trying to deport, which would be like between 10 and 20 million people, first of all, that would be a tremendous expense on the part of the government, because the government would be paying for processing and housing all of these people while they're going through the deportation process. The estimate is between $10,000 and $20,000 per person for deportation. So if you do that times 10 million people, you're looking at like $100 billion in cost to just deport these people.
I'm not. I don't. Listen, the deportations would be tough. There are a lot of people that are here illegally. I think what needs to be done is a system to get people here legally. Needs to be made a lot easier, but we also really need to tighten the border and the security. I think almost everybody believes we have a problem with people coming here illegally.
So I'm not going to say that there aren't good faith conversations that can't be had about a bunch of things that are broken in our immigration policy. What I'm going to say is that his plan of mass deportations, not only would it have $100 billion price tag up front, but it would lead to a decrease in national GDP between 1% and 7% over 4 years. And to give you some context for those numbers, so in 2020, we saw a drop of 3.5%, and that was the worst year economically for our country in a very long time, like worse than 2008.
Well, and a lot of illegal people that are working in production-based jobs in the U.S.
Yeah, but basically, all the economists that have looked at this plan have saying, like, look, if we were to have a decrease of 7% over 4 years, that's an economic catastrophe.
Yes, but I don't think we would be kicking every illegal person out.
That's what mass deportations now means.
I don't necessarily think that's even feasible. So yeah, it's a theory. It's a bad theory, but I don't think it's a feasible theory. All right, move on to the next here.
I mean, the last one is just like Trump's tax plan would see the majority of the tax benefits going to the top 10% of income earners, while the bottom 50% of income earners would actually see their tax burdens increase. So that's just not helping the people that need help.
Yeah, although I will say not that I agree with it, I'll give a stipulation. The idea of not taxing overtime actually sounds very good for not 10%.
You know what? That's a misleading claim, because and this is from Project 2025, one of their recommendations is to reclass the way that overtime works. So the way overtime currently works is every week is measured independently. So if you work 45 hours in a week, that's 5 hours of overtime. If you work 35 hours the next week, that's 35 hours of normal time. Under Project 2025, what they want to do is lengthen the window in which overtime is measured. So, like, you could have a week where you burn 60 or 70 hours, and then the employer might say, oh, you're only working 10 hours next week. Now you get no overtime. So the no tax on overtime is kind of a false flag, because in a lot of ways, like, some of his of Project 2025's policy goals are to effectively eliminate overtime from ever being paid. So if it's never being paid, it never gets taxed. Who cares if you're not taxing it if you never earn it, right?
Interesting. All right, next.
I can provide citations for that one as well.
We got 10 minutes left, so let's Project 25.
All right, next one. Trump is only seeking the presidency this time to evade consequences from his various criminal trials. He knows that the only way he's going to get out of his federal trials is by becoming president again.
That was something that I mentioned earlier. There's a lot of chaos that's happened since 2020, and I think that's one of his major reasons for running again now. So he's got a lot of debts to pay off. He's got a lot kind of charged on his ass right now. So
real quick on this one, since we're running out of time. So I would say, to someone who believes that Trump is not guilty of these crimes, I say it's fine for you to believe that. Let him play this out in court. If I'm charged with something and I'm truly not guilty, I want to be on trial tomorrow. And I cannot wait to present my case because I know I'm not guilty.
You want it behind you.
Huh? Yeah, I want it behind me, but I also want to be able to say, here's my side of the story. You guys are all wrong. So I would say, first of all, the trial should play out. And I think that if Trump is found not guilty in any of his trials, great. But I want the trial to happen. And everyone should.
Yeah, I'm not really concerned with the trials. I mean, it is what it is. I watched what happened on January 6th. I know he's a fraudster. That's why I don't care much for him. I don't care much for Kamala either. Don't get me wrong, but this whole January 6th thing, they're saying nothing happened. But here's my thinking: is that if he didn't say something, but if those people weren't stopped, you know what mob mentality does, right? They literally would have hung Mike Pence because when you're in a mob, it's the same shit happened on the other side.
You can find video there are people literally frothing at the mouth.
Well, what I was
January 6th
was on the other side you have Black Lives Matter. It was just not that all Black Lives Matter was a mob. I'm saying there are certain things that happen in mob mentality. When you're in a group, people are being kind of
mob mentality is one of the scariest behaviors you will ever see in humans.
It is because there's zero accountability, and now they're trying to claim back accountability on the January 6th people, and they have in many of those cases,
1,000 cases.
But this mob mentality where people just act as if there are no consequences, as if they are an individual, they would have done some really bad shit.
We're extremely lucky that January 6th did not turn out even worse than it already did. And the whole hang Mike Pence thing, when his aides went and told him they're chanting hang Mike Pence, Trump's reaction was well, maybe he deserves it.
I remember watching that morning from my old office. I can't believe this is wild.
Yeah, I'm going to skip over my commentary on the classified documents case because I've already said what I needed to say, which is let him stand trial. And if he's not guilty, I'll respect the verdict, but let him have a free and fair trial. So on to Trump does not respect democracy or the Constitution. So we talked about January 6th a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more now. I think that with 4 years, we seem to have forgotten how terrible that day was and how much worse it could have been. They had gallows constructed in front of the Capitol with Mike Pence's name on it. The angry mob was roughly 40 feet from Mike Pence at one point. And I don't even like Mike Pence, but I do not think that he should ever be hanged.
We're going to have to wrap this in just a minute.
All right. Well,
I'll give you two more.
He's openly suggested suspending the Constitution. He suggested killing the families of people suspected of terrorism, which is a direct violation of the Geneva Convention. He frequently calls for violence against various groups at his rallies, notably calling for violence against the press and calling the press the enemy of the people. I'm gonna run through the rest of these real fast.
I was going to give you two more. How fast you get? I'll give you another minute.
All right. Trump admin would trample on the human rights of many U.S. citizens. Mass deportations would split up families and disrupt entire communities. You can think about his child separation policies at the border under his first administration, the restrictions on reproductive health care, birth control, abortion, and possibly even making interracial marriage illegal. His Department of Education scaled back investigations into civil rights. The Trump admin deported 463 migrant parents while their children remained in the United States completely alone. The Trump admin tracked and harassed journalists who reported on the child separations at the border. Real quick, Trump has no understanding of how government works and no desire to learn. When asked about basic policy questions, he can never actually give a solid answer. And I would love to read the full quote that he had when he was asked about things that his administration would do for childcare. You can think about his response in the debate when he was asked about what his plan was for replacing Obamacare, and he only said, "I have concepts of a plan." You can think about any time he didn't know what to do in his administration. They just call it Infrastructure Week. I'm going to skip over how bad it would be for the environment. Just like
All right, you're out of time. Last one. You got one left.
nearly everyone who. Okay, this is the last one then. Nearly everyone who worked with him in his first administration is warning people not to vote for him.
Okay.
Like the
Okay.
generals, like chiefs of
I
staff,
have,
Chris Christie,
I have a
Mike
question.
Pence.
I have a question for you. Who do you think is going to win?
I think we're not going to know on Tuesday or Wednesday. I think Harris is. I think a lot of the early signs point favorably towards Harris, especially the high volume of early voting and the fact that like a lot of women are a lot of women who have never voted before are feeling activated to vote this year. I think it's going to be closer than it ever should have been, but I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to dodge a giant orange bullet in a week, but I am nowhere near confident enough to sleep soundly until the race is called.
So, I actually, for the first time, and I've been seeing this for the last 5 years, there have been Trump signs, so literally the last 5 years, even before that last election, which he was running in, by the way. But I walk by some businesses, these kind of New York City storefronts that sell like New York City apparel and trinkets. And I just started seeing some Kamala shirts and hats and things like that, but I have not seen very much of it. I just, on Halloween, trick or treating, saw some Harris lawn signs, which I had not seen very many Harris lawn signs at all summer long, but I did see lawn signs. They were for Trump. So I was like, oh, wait a second, there they are. I hadn't even realized I wasn't seeing them. And then I started seeing them, like, wow, now I realize I have not been seeing them all summer. So that's pretty wild. I think Kamala, listen, everybody who likes Trump is like pretty much just okay with everything you just said on that list.
Which is terrible.
And that's why, it is. And that's kind of why I'm giving you that platform to share. But most people know this stuff. And the people that support him also know this. So I don't know, but I still do think he's more likely going to win. And it's a good point that we may not know. I think if Kamala is more likely to win, we won't know on Tuesday. However, if Trump has the edge, I think it'll be very clear, and he's just going to assume the role.
I don't think it's going to be very clear either way, and I think I agree generally with your statement, but I also think that
he must have a whole plan, though. He must have a whole plan already in place to do something in the event that he doesn't win.
Well, yeah, but one big difference between this year and 2020 is that the Democrats also have an army of lawyers ready and prepared to fight potential election challenges.
Lawyers aren't going to fight back against the angry mobs. We have to do bar trivia question. I got a minute left, and I'll let you finish if we have time after the bar trivia question. Bar trivia question, episode 259. I am an odd number. Now, don't answer this in the air if you get it. I'm an odd number. Take away one letter, and I become even. I'm an odd number. You take away one letter, I become even.
Easy. Got it.
All right, cool. So I'll let you fit. That's the bar trivia question for this week. Visit SipTalkPodcast.com to give us your answer. I'll have that question online within the hour. And visit SipTalkPodcast.com to buy us a drink. All right, what were you saying a second ago? We'll just round it out to the music sweeps us away.
I mean, I really worry about what's going to happen to this country. I think the next 6 weeks are going to be turbulent no matter what. I'm hoping that we come out on the other side intact and safe. And I don't want any election violence. I want the election to go smoothly. I would prefer greatly that Harris wins. And if she doesn't, well, I've already made my start in researching properties in Spain.
All right, that concludes this episode We'll see you next week. It's a one-off. We'll see you next Thursday.
No, next Tuesday we're doing it. We're doing an election night.
All right, it's going to be live next Tuesday. See you all later. Thank you for joining. Adios. All right, my friends, that concludes this episode. Let me know whether you agree or disagree, and be as specific as possible with my colleague James. See you next time.